It is Thursday, September 13th, 2018, and this is the MMA Beat. Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas from SiriusXM, as well as MMAfighting.com. We have some regular faces back. To my left, El Niño Colombiano. He is Danny Segura from MMA Fighting. And at the very end, back from Dallas, is the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall from The Ringer, as well as, of course, MMAfighting.com. How was Dallas, Chuck?
Probably not as good as Greece, but
actually, both are pretty bad. Yeah. Greece is in bad shape. People don't realize that. And also, Dallas sucks. There's that. I have family there. The place sucks. What are you gonna say? All right, but we are back, ready to rock. Now we'll talk about Dallas a little bit later in the show. Of course, UFC 228. Dallas may suck, but UFC 228 a fantastic card. Let's put that on the table for a little bit later. Let's start with the more immediate news, guys. It was announced yesterday that the UFC is going to be at Radio City Music Hall 1 week from today to get a presser, finally, for UFC's 229 Khabib versus McGregor. Now, there are a couple of details I found very interesting. The timing, it's 3 weeks before the fight. That seems okay, but a little late, right? I mean, you got to imagine Mayweather, McGregor, and Triple G Canelo were only 3 weeks apart. This is sort of that's a narrow timeline. Two, I thought more interesting, no audience. You're in Radio City Music Hall with no audience. Just media is going to be allowed. So there's a lot of different components here to think about, and we are going to speculate breathlessly here a little bit. But so, Danny, I'll start with you. What do you make of the timing, 3 weeks away? What do you make of the city? Seems like it was catering a little bit to Conor, but on the other hand, there's no audience, which seems to fit a little bit more Khabib style. What's up?
Well, the city is obviously like a great idea because New York, all the media is here, so you know it won't be hard to get the media out there. The audience thing did surprise me a bit, but it makes sense. I understand this fight is probably the biggest fight that the UFC has ever booked, and you know we know a lot of things have gone wrong with dealing with Conor McGregor, and you never know. You put the Irish fans together, and you know there's a big population of Russians here, and. You know, I don't know if, you know, for folks who've never been to, like, any press conference, like, I was at a press conference for when Khabib was going to fight Max Holloway at UFC 223, right? And there was people yelling behind me, like, you know, you suck, this and that, and they get pretty rowdy. So with Conor McGregor, and that was a very respectful
build-up. Was that the one in
it was in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg.
In Williamsburg? Or was it Super South? No?
No, it was in Williamsburg.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, I can imagine why they want to, you know, be a lot more careful. As far as the timing goes, I mean...
Let me push back on that.
Go for it.
I think there's two different theories about that, right? One is that, yes, you want to make sure that the media can get all their assets. On the other hand, it seems so far away from the McGregor-Aldo style, which was blown into the atmosphere by the audience. So why is one better than the other?
I mean, this is personal. I mean, Conor McGregor literally went to court attacking Khabib. And on top of that, he's gotten personal. He's gone out there to, you know, go after his family. And, you know, Khabib's been down for the day one. He's like, all right, let's fight. If you want to fight, send me your location. We'll throw down. So, you know, it's very hostile. I think this would be Conor McGregor's most hostile buildup. So I understand the UFC taking all the precautions. As far as
for this one,
that is a great point, because if we look at the McGregor-Mayweather buildup, it almost felt like he was doing a comedy bit, right? When he was going up there and speaking, it was a show. And
really
he's always
poor comedy when he got to Brooklyn.
And he's always been that person that feeds off for the Mayweather fight.
Yeah. Well, you could do it for the Aldo fight. You could do that for the Alvarez fight. Coming in with that fur coat.
Yeah, and he always caters the audience, right? And even though who is that guy, you know, and the audience was cracking up.
He's also so big picture, though. He knows a bad look. He knows if he shows up and looking like a gangster throwing.
He doesn't know a bad look, because I was there in Brooklyn when he was talking about how he was black from the waist down. And even if you don't feel like that's objectionable, it fell flat.
Of course, you know? I know. But then how did he show up in the next one? He was in a suit. He was like, you know, I'm just saying, like, I think he understands when he tips over the line. I think he has a big picture enough mindset to know how it looks right now with them using that promo material to come in the opposite. He just knows how to play that. That's why I think he'll come in that way.
And I just quickly want to add, did you guys get a chance to look at all the 3 official promos that the UFC put out?
I did not, no.
They were all
surrounding one of them.
They were all surrounding the Dolly incident. Not even one told the story about, you know, hey, this guy was the champion, he got stripped.
Right.
The winner of this fight might be one of the greatest lightweights of all time. No, it was all
There are
Dolly.
so many oddities with this buildup. Let me talk about the buildup, if I can, for just a second, right? Here's another oddity. Number one, I went back and looked at old press releases. Now, old press releases talking about this fight, even just the one prior to the one that came out yesterday, it did identify McGregor as a 2-division champ. That was sort of his title. But it referred to him in other ones as the former world champion, former lightweight, former featherweight. The word former was in there.
Yeah.
You look at yesterday's press release, the word former is nowhere to be found. Secondly, you then look at the video assets themselves, and I found two things very curious. It's about this grudge match, which I get. You're trying to sell a fight, but it's like, well, it's more than that. It's maybe the most important fight in the history of that division for two of its most towering talents. And you get really none of that, which is kind of funny. The third thing I thought was funny, Danny, was that they actually not only showed the Dolly incident, they made a graphics package of glass shattering, and then it gets to like McGregor's back. Like they didn't go all in, man. Yeah. They were born into this.
It's pretty funny.
Is it not shocking?
We talked about it before. We're like, will they use? This was a question.
Will they?
Yeah, will they use any of it? And here we are. Here we are with all of that as the lead, basically. And I, to an extent, you get it because that was in the news. I think that that's their best play to attract a wider audience, to be honest. Like if you're talking about all of us guys who pay attention, it is sold. It is already sold. To anybody within the periphery who's paid attention, it's already sold. I think they're just they're only going to use that stuff to kind of be sensationalist to the people who don't know.
But I mean, this fight's not happening because of the Dolly incident. It wasn't, Conor McGregor threw a Dolly. Now we got to make this fight.
Although it certainly solidified it. You know what I mean?
For sure. But this fight was already talked about in the book since the moment Conor McGregor got stripped and since the moment, Khabib won that title. So tell that story as well. And look, I'm not against telling the Dolly story because I think it's important and it's definitely part of it. But man, there's other storylines in the buildup as well. I think, it sounds harsh, but it is kind of lazy. And we've seen the UFC sort of just take the hands off the wheel and be like, all right, you guys promote it. Here's some mics. You do it. And then this is what happened. And that's what they're going for. But there's millions of storylines going into this fight.
It's crazy that Dolly is going to end up being worth so many millions of dollars in the end. Regardless of which way that money is being distributed is pretty crazy.
They should just call the fight UFC 229. This is the fight about the dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be more helpful than even putting McGregor's name in it for crying out loud. Last thing on the press conference, because we are just sort of spitballing here a little bit. Good on the line. We talked about McGregor. What about Khabib? What are you expecting from him?
Man, I think he's, if you look at what McGregor has done on Instagram, taking jab at his training partners, which are like brothers to him, at his father, he hasn't really come out there and said anything. I expect him to be very stoic, very cold. He just wants to fight. Yeah. And he might throw a jab here and there, but I really just expect a guy that just wants to get this over with and get in the octagon.
You?
I expect it to be raised, honestly, like from his side of things. I think that he downplayed McGregor's existence almost, even though we all knew that was a big money fight. We all knew that, there's a lot of mojo that swings that way that I'm sure gets sick of. He wants to smash. He wants to humble him. I think that we'll finally see some of that stuff come out. And it's going to be fun from that perspective even more so because, he's kind of the challenger, even though he's the champion. It's a weird setup, and I think that's going to be. I think he'll have a chip on his shoulder. He'll be the normal stoic self, but I honestly believe he'll be a little more intense than we normally see.
I think I disagree a little bit. I think it'll be two-way basketball because if you remember when you go back and look at the Rafael dos Anjos build-up, they had that one presser where he did the whole. Pablo Escobar, or who was it? No, it wasn't Escobar. It was El Chapo.
Yes.
It was a totally disgraceful moment, but. He chewed Rafael dos Anjos to pieces verbally because Rafael dos Anjos was like, I'm just here to be a great model citizen, and Conor will just annihilate you if you do that. Yeah. So I think you're going to get a little bit of defense. Yes, he's going to sort of like brush off some, but he's going to try and dunk on him at other times. How successfully, I guess we'll see.
I mean, a lot of the success of Conor McGregor is having the audience react, right? Like, who the F is that guy is not nearly as powerful without the audience just bursting out, right?
Agreed, but let's be real about this. Half the media are Conor fanboys. Let's just be absolutely clear about that. I like them. They're good people.
It'll be just like their fans then.
It'll be just like his fans being there. Trust me. Not as many in number, of course.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But in terms
it will be weird, I have to say, man, to be in a venue like that, which is a cool old venue. And if it's just quiet in there while they're talking. I mean, normally when we've seen the build-up to a McGregor fight, there is just this stentorian, ruckus going on in the background, drunk people and flags waving and song breaking out.
All right.
So
we got to move along. Last thing on this, I'll just say I went to the Mayweather. Well, I didn't go to Mayweather-Pacquiao presser, but that was subdued. But that was Mayweather-Pacquiao. I did go to Mayweather versus Canelo because they did a tour as well, and that was a goddamn pep rally. It was incredible to watch that. So there's no right or wrong answer. I guess we'll see what the numbers are on the end. To be clear, it's going to be a killer event and a huge pay-per-view bonanza, but we'll see what the numbers are in the end. Other thing about this, UFC 230 still has no main event, and I know you guys in media, you probably get asked on Twitter every day, who's going to be in the main event. The answer is, we don't know. Sorry, we don't know. But here's what we do know. They were originally going to have tickets go on sale the day after this presser, but of course you could have had to the public. But if you're on the newsletter or the Fight Club, their Insiders Club, whatever you want to call that, the Movie Pass version, they would get them a little bit early, presumably before the announcement or whatever is going to happen. Because I thought, wow, if you don't have a UFC 230 main event, you're going to announce it at this presser. Now they're going to have it 1 week after the presser. So I guess my question to the table is, whoever wants to grab it, are they going to announce a UFC 230 main event in New York City for a New York City event? And if so, who the hell is it?
Yes. Well, that is $1 million question, isn't it? I do believe that they'll announce it, though. Okay. I think that it's the right setting. Obviously, you have the most amount of eyes, and they can hype it up as much as they want. We saw them when they actually broke this fight, the Nurmagomedov McGregor fight. They actually did it at that big presser, and what was it, in Los Angeles or Vegas, wherever that was.
Los Angeles, I think.
So they broke it there, even though they kind of played coy, like they weren't going to do it. I think that we're probably in store for something like that. Again, it would make all the sense in the world. But as far as who it'll be, that's honestly, I don't know, because I don't really get John Jones' situation. I don't know what it's all the USADA tie-up. If he's able to fight, I would have to think that is their guy, right? Like, I would think that that's the guy. Being from New York, he's always wanted to do that. There's another part of me, though, that says, hey, they didn't want to trust him even for his last fight, the UFC. They didn't want to put him in a position where he was going to headline that event.
Yeah, beggars can't be choosers.
It's true. I think the UFC, though, he's got the leverage in this situation as long as he's able to fight, being from New York, and I think he's the last big name, maybe outside of GSP. Or something like that.
People have said, by the way, Danny, maybe it's Colby versus Tyron. Look, fantastic fight. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't sell above 4. Not without a proper build-up. It does not sell above 4. And that's a brilliant.
That would be a conjunction.
I think that's a pretty big fight.
It's a big fight, properly sold. But right now, it's just a co-main. It's a great co-main. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to be demeaning, but I don't think that's I'm not saying they won't do that, but I don't think that's the right one.
I would agree with that. I think there's also a possibility of young Jacek and Valentina Shevchenko, given the fact that they stripped Montano, and that seemed pretty early, pretty a hasty decision. So
it's not a bad point.
Yeah, so I think that's a possibility as well.
Do you agree that it gets announced at that presser next week?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
When do you think it gets announced then?
Probably a few days after that, though, even though it probably should get announced in that press conference. But I actually think that Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington could headline that and could be pretty big. And, you just have to show, that's such a perfect fight. And it's been, in the build-up for such a long time. I think it has the magnitude to headline.
It's interesting in Dallas in that post-fight presser, people were bringing up, obviously, MSG to Woodley. And the way he handled the question was sort of like, that's interesting. Where's my manager? That sort of thing. Yeah. Almost like this wasn't a new idea, and that makes you think like maybe he is in the discussion to at least.
They asked him. He's like, I can fight in November. They know where to find me.
But it was clearly like something that he'd already been processing.
Yeah. I had Colby on my radio show on Monday. We tried to get on the MMA Hour, but the timing didn't work. But I had him on my radio show. And I asked him, I was like, is this a real possibility? He goes, I am telling you. And you could tell for a moment the shtick dropped. He goes, it is a very real possibility. Yeah. He's like, nothing's signed, nothing's official, but he was hinting at it big time.
For months, he's been wanting to fight in November, right? That was the whole reason why that fight didn't happen.
Do we think that it's going to be 2 fights that they announce, though? Is it going to be, are they going to announce 2 fights maybe for that, to kind of bring it to something bigger?
So to his point, I hadn't even considered that, but they could do something with Valentina Shevchenko, whether she's winning a Jacek or not.
It's a vacant title right now.
It's a vacant title, and she's ready. She's ready to rock. She told us that on Monday, too. So that's an interesting one they could add as simply a bonus.
Yeah.
But I don't think that headlines, man. I could be wrong. Who knows? But the John Jones thing is so goddamn weird.
Dana didn't even stick around for Woodley's. He doesn't. Give Woodley, Dana. I'm talking about Dana did not even stick around for Woodley. His presser.
After the presser.
There's just obviously some tension in the air. It'd be a huge leap to. It'd be more on the Covington side than if that's the case. Even given his new
Covington seems all in.
I know.
Here's the thing about it. The John Jones thing is weird, even to the point where Stephen Morocco of MMA Junkie had to ask USADA, hey, what do you make of these rumors? Y'all are being paid off
good for Stephen.
To benefit John Jones in some capacity. And they were like, we deny all this. And I don't know what the hell's happening, other than to say, and we'll talk about this later in the show, the whole Fabricio Werdum thing. It's like 4 months passed between the announcement of potential violation and ultimately his agreement to the terms, and it's a 2-year ban. Again, we'll talk about that in a moment. But John's been what? We're now 15 months or something? I mean, it's like, I don't even understand what's happening here.
I don't either.
All right. Neither here nor there.
That's obviously the big elephant in the room, is that John Jones is not. Yeah.
Last thing about Conor McGregor that broke this week was not so much about him exactly, but about another UFC lightweight, well, I guess soon to be UFC welterweight, because he's not going to do it again. Michael Chiesa suing Conor McGregor for a series of damages. I'm assuming he was going to want some kind of monetary compensation, claiming emotional distress and a variety of things in the lawsuit. Let me say this up front. I saw a lot of people being like, anytime anyone in MMA files a lawsuit, the fans automatically, like, fans equate lawsuit with frivolity. Like, there's no, like, a lawsuit being frivolous is like redundant to them. Yeah. It's like there's no possible way you could be owed something or wronged in the world such that you would want to sue someone, which is kind of funny. Now, he does claim some things in there that seem a little bit exaggerated, like he's under this incredible emotional distress. And I tried to make the point, of course you claim that in the lawsuit, because a judge is going to want to see your best case to make some kind of sober assessment down the middle. And folks are saying, well, how could you be emotionally distressed and take a fight after that? Well, that's how you get paid. Right? I mean, it's all the suit.
He also lost, right? Like in his,
and also there's the lost wages that you lost from that fight that was supposed to happen against Pettis the first time. Neither here nor there. I'm not here to be his lawyer, other than to say, and I guess I want to go to you first on this one, Danny, which is, are you surprised he sued? And here's my question. The almost universal response has been extraordinary blowback, and I do believe this. You can be as right as rain on a lawsuit, and you can damage your brand in this business, even if you're totally in the right. Was it a good call? Was it a bad call? Are you surprised he sued?
I'm not surprised, and ultimately, I do think it's a good call. I mean, he got pulled out of that card because of the incident, right? And then we all know what happened as well, and he said it. Conor McGregor cost me a title shot. I cannot say that for sure, but you can definitely, at least, play with the possibility, because Quinta got the title shot, right? But Michael Chiesa was ranked above him as well, so you never know. And that was also his last
part of the suit, Yeah,
then he fought again, and that was his last fight at lightweight, because he's saying he's going to welterweight. So that really could have been his maybe his only chance to fight for gold, right, at 155. Yeah. So there's so many things surrounding it as well, and like, it's funny because fans are just like, oh, quit being a wimp. It's just like, you just had a glass shattered on your face.
I know. It's like, how many fist fights do you have to be in professionally before fans think you're tough? I don't know.
So I'm not surprised it happened. And, I do think it's a good move, because these are the kind of things that happen in normal life. Like, something costs you money, you
What do you think?
I know the blowback even extends to Rose Namajunas, who was recently saying that she's been, mentally scarred, or I guess her coach, Trevor Whitman, was saying this.
Who, by the way, to my knowledge, has not filed suit.
Right. Not that I'm aware of. But, I mean, it's one of those situations like we don't, everybody functions differently. Yeah. Some people find a traumatic experience and, walking across the street. Other people can put up with tons of stuff and they're never affected. It's impossible for us to truly know to what level he was mentally broken down from that incident. Now, I will say that he's one of the few guys, when that video, like the inside the bus was shot, did look a little shocked. When he's bleeding in the face, he looks like he's a little stunned. I think that there's probably some merit to that. I'm not going to be like, oh, that's ridiculous. And I think that it was inevitable that we were going to see a lawsuit or possibly more from this whole thing, because you had guys losing their fights. And I do believe him. When this was all unfolding, Chiesa I kept thinking like, wow, that's really sucks for him, because he probably would have got that shot. Now that's speculation. It's just kind of like playing it forward and going off of a series of logic of how they actually booked it. But I think he would have. I think he would have got that shot. So from his perspective, not only was it traumatic, it was also very it cost him a lot. Now he's lost his fight. I don't think there's a chance he'll never be put in a position like that again. Yeah. I mean, it's prize fighting, but it's like there's still prizes, and there's a guy with all this money, man. I mean, and he did this, and he caused this. the people are gonna go after him.
It's just weird because there's a weird code in MMA where the guy who I think was probably affected the most, being Ray Borg, having his vision was temporarily affected.
And he tried to fight and he couldn't.
Right.
You know, he had to withdraw.
And I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't think he's...
And the poor guy just got like dumped on by the people. I mean, during that, I was like I felt bad for him.
Remember, he got labeled as a malingerer.
Yeah.
Now Rose is being labeled as a exaggerator, and now Michael is being labeled as an opportunist. It's like, let me go back and refresh everybody's memory here. The guy vandalized a bust and caused, 3 fights on the card to ultimately be lost? Yeah. And no one's entitled to any damages? That seems insane. I mean, I don't know exactly how mentally affected Michael is. I don't know. But there's a pretty clear argument that he was financially affected at a bare minimum. And how much, a judge and a thing. The one thing I can't figure out is, why doesn't McGregor just settle?
I don't know. I'm sure.
Just settle. Like, you think you're going to win in a court case where they got you on camera vandalizing?
I feel like that
it's
would
a
happen.
guarantee.
All the UFC 229
It's a guaranteed lock.
I feel like that happens, though, don't you? I mean, I feel like they do settle.
Eventually.
Yes, eventually. Yeah, why let it get to this point?
I'm guessing,
I know what you're saying.
You know what? I have a hunch that they went and tried to mediate this ahead of time.
Yeah.
And that his team said, no, we'll take it to court. Okay.
You never know how many people he's already settled with, either. You know, that whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The other thing is, obviously, like, part of his lawsuit is against the Barclays itself for their lack of security and things like that. And I think that I mean, he's got great points. You actually look at the suit itself, what he's filing against, and you're like, yes, how could that have happened? You know what I mean? And of course, we know the story that McGregor was let in by the media and stuff like that, but his site, the guys at his site.
Anyway, I don't know what's going to happen. I suspect eventually they will settle.
Yeah.
I do wonder what will happen long term to Chiesa's brand, even if you're totally in the right. And I do think he has a very meritorious suit on some level, anyway. Maybe not all of it, but some of it certainly. The community has a weird response to stuff like that, so I guess we're going to have to follow. Now, that takes us to what happened. We'll look ahead to UFC Moscow in a moment. That takes us at a moment to look backwards a little bit. You were there in Dallas, Chuck, so we'll go to you first. UFC 228. First of all, you agree, probably card of the year so far.
For sure.
Yeah?
Yep.
I don't know what, the attendance was 14,000?
It was pretty full in there. I was surprised, man. There was only, there were no sections. Sometimes there's block-out sections. I saw none of that. There was just scattered few seats that were vacant. That's about it. Yeah.
So at any event, Tyron Woodley goes and just runs through Darren Till. Now, we've talked about it pretty extensively in the MMA Hour, but now that there's been some time to pass, and you were there as well, it felt like immediately folks were like, you know what? Tyron Woodley is better than we thought. And Tyron Woodley deserves more respect than we're giving him. Where do you come down on this? Has he changed perceptions?
I think so. I thought he might get booed. He was booed a little bit just in some of the preliminary stuff during fight week, just from fans who were showing up. But on fight night, they're both their walkouts were these tremendous things. It had the feel of a big fight. It really did. Yeah. Even though I thought it didn't have that when you thought about it until it got to the moment, then it felt big. But when he came out, it was a huge pop in there, and I was a little bit surprised by that, just first off. But then by the time he was able to finish that fight with the second round, the place was on his feet. I was like, wow, this is Tyron Woodley. Like, he's getting an ovation. Like, people really appreciate him. But then, just watching social media and everything, it's the weirdest thing ever. I felt like a lot of his haters turned a corner. I'm sure that he's still going to have plenty of people who don't like him, because I think that it's his approach. It's his approach in the media. It's him being real. It's him kind of grousing about things, airing his, you know what I mean? That sort of thing tends to rub people the wrong way. Ultimately, we just want to see fights and all that stuff. But ultimately, man, as long as he doesn't call Nick Diaz out or do something really crazy, I think that going into that Covington fight, presuming that that's the one they go with, he has the chance to be the hero in the whole scenario, and I think he will be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and to your point, for this post-fight conference, like, he wasn't calling out Nate Diaz, GSP. He was saying, yo, anybody that wants it can get it. Like Usman, Covington, like, he's down to fight anybody. And I think that was a big point why fans hated him. As soon as he won the title, he's like, yo, I want GSP, I want Nick Diaz.
That was the big first thing that I noticed.
And that was the first thing. Now he's just like, look, it doesn't matter. I can't change people's mind. I'm just here to fight. Bring it. Sign anybody up, and I'll fight him. And I think that helped him a lot. And also just his performance. I mean, he got one of the most dangerous strikers in the division to just throw two strikes.
Shut him down.
Two strikes and just destroyed him. I mean, how can you hate on that performance? He didn't even take him down, right? He dropped him with a punch, ground and pounded the hell out of him, and then submitted him. Like, you just can't hate on that. So he put himself in a position where you literally cannot hate on him. And if you do, you're just
I mean, and the stigma also existed that was kind of BS to begin with. Yes, he might have been calling out guys like Diaz, but he was still fighting the best guys. I mean, he's been fighting. So this guy comes in, he handled himself great all week, and then he just shuts him out like that. I mean, it's kind of hard to hate on him. I mean, even if you don't like Tyron Woodley, it's hard to hate on his performance when he just does that to this kid who is undefeated and has a lot of fans there. I thought he had the hunger. You know, he looked good all week. His weight cut was on. I'm like, for him to just shut that guy out like that was impressive, man.
You know what's also interesting is how much. It's like, I think everybody still likes Darren Till, and the fact that he's 25 years old and could change weight classes. I think people, rightly so, still have a pretty strong degree of optimism for him, and I think that's the right attitude to have. But what's interesting is how much the promotion about him backfired in a good way. Here's what I mean. That promo came out with BT Sport, and they've been promoting Darren for a while now, but the promo comes out, and you're like, God damn, they are not only promoting Darren Till a lot, they're doing a really good job of it. But the more they wanted to find someone like a wonder boy, the more, Maia got his title shot a little bit begrudgingly, but the more that they've wanted to find someone to take that title from him, the more it's made Tyron look good. And like Colby Covington, if he not only loses, but loses badly, Tyron Woodley might turn in, like, Tyron Woodley after that could probably run for president and maybe win. Because all it's doing is showing how good Tyron is in the cage and making him more likable outside of it.
True.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch this unfold.
Somebody made the point that it's almost like Silva's trajectory. I don't really see it that way totally, but Anderson Silva did have a moment where, you know, people were hating on him big time. Didn't think he wanted to fight. He was clowning around in there. Remember, you know, the David Maia one again? And the Patrick Cote one, which was, it wasn't the greatest. Obviously, there was an injury, I think, in that one.
Cote got injured late.
But I mean, there was a couple fights strung together where all of a sudden he was, you know, taking the black eye in this whole situation, in a situation like that. I do agree with you. I think that's how fickle and how malleable our perception is on things like this.
He also had the bad luck of just fighting just some of the best specialists in MMA. Like, if you look at Damian Maia after the Tyron Woodley fight, which, let's be honest, it wasn't the most exciting fight. He goes on and fights, Jorge Masvidal, right? Not the greatest fight. Then he goes fights Usman, not the greatest fight. Covington, right? Not the greatest fight. Same thing with Stephen Thompson, right? He goes in there and fights Darren Till. Pretty boring fight.
Although he fought Masvidal and it was fine.
So it doesn't really come down to, Tyron Woodley's a boring fighter. It's just the type of guys he's facing. Now look at what he can do against Darren Till. So I think there was some bad luck as well.
I mean, the way he did it in this one, like he met Till on his own terms. I mean, that's what was cool about it. If he had went in, I thought maybe he would wrestle more because I thought this was a setup a little bit. Like maybe he would pull out the singlet and all of a sudden we'd see that again. But he did a little bit. I mean, he was trying for the takedown a little early, but I mean, he was letting his hands fly. I thought that was cool, and it got a big rise out of the crowd there in Dallas.
Like the only way to discount the win is to say terrible things about Darren Till. In other words, like there was no judging controversy, there's no reffing controversy, there's not even counting an offense controversy. It's all one-way traffic for Tyron Woodley. Right. So it's just like, what are you going to do? Now, that brings me to Darren Till. And as I mentioned, Danny, I do think 25 years old, he's still trying to get his weight right, which, you know, is not great, but it's not the end of the world. He did get the nutritionist. His nutritionist says, according to our friend Pete Carroll on the Eurobash podcast, that guy can make 170 for years to come, according to his nutritionist. So what do you think? Like, what is the proper attitude now about Darren Till? How should we be viewing his future and his performance from Saturday?
I mean, if you were the UFC, you want to put him where he's the most comfortable, right? If he really wants to try out, keep at 170, I assume you can't really force him to 185, so I guess give him a good matchup, you know, a favorable matchup, because this is a guy that does, you know, have a whole country behind him, and man, just the way he talks, even in that press conference, he showed up and he's like, he just laid it all. In some ways, he was very similar to Tyron Woodley. He just let it all out there. He was like, look, I'm heartbroken. I'm on the verge of crying. But don't get me wrong, I'm still going to be the greatest of all time. And man, that is respectable. And, you know, he's definitely a huge asset for the UFC.
Yeah, these guys' character coming out in a situation like that, you know, they come out and that was in the room and it was very heartfelt. I think ultimately, and I was talking to his nutritionist out there as well, Owen Gallagher, I think is his name. He was keeping me updated really as to what was going on. Obviously, it benefits the nutritionists themselves to keep him at 170 because they did a great job of actually getting him down incrementally, and he was in fine fettle the whole way, as far as we saw. So he could make 170. I'm just not sure why at this point, because you're 25 years old. I think his natural frame, I think, he's going to be a little bit, he's going to probably grow a little bit more. And I think that 185 is just, would be more natural for him, unless there's some fight specifically he wants to go get that do, maybe get back there quickly. But it was so one-sided. He just has no route back to Woodley at this point. It would have to be somebody else with that belt for him to even be in the consideration. So if it's about the belt, I think he should go to 185 at this point.
That's interesting.
I mean, I guess the only fight that makes... I want to see him at 185, because if you look at the fight with Woodley, I mean, there was a huge size advantage. And even Woodley, when he tied up with him and tried to take him down with the trip,
moving him too much.
It wasn't really that Darren Till was having great technique with the takedown. It was just, he was so big. He just wasn't moving him. So I'd like to see him at 185, but if he does stick around 170, I'd still like to see that Mike Perry fight. I think, it's a fantastic fight.
There are good fights at 170. If he wants to do it, I mean, the guy is... One loss isn't going to define him. In fact, it probably will make him stronger. At least that kind of kid. But I mean, ultimately, if he went to 185, it would open up a whole bunch of possibilities too. In talking to them, I think his game plan was to win this one and then to fight, fight one more at 170 and then to move on anyway. So do you expedite at this point if that was really your plan? From his personal, from his perspective, I feel like 185, if it's inevitable, it just seems like the right time to go.
The weight cut clouded a lot going into this fight. That was really the topic. All the headlines where,
all the
Darren Till gives update on
it was annoying it was annoying to everybody, not just
And I feel like that's going to follow him for the rest of his career, even though he made 169 just because how big he is and giving his past as well. So why not get rid of that? Why not get a fresh start, move up to 185 and get some good matchups?
Certainly not a bad idea. A couple more points about UFC 228. Danny, what do you make about the low ratings on FX? We're coming in the lowest of the year for this kind of thing on the prelims. At around 500, I think sub 570,000.
Yeah, I think it was like
568 or something.
Yeah, it's surprising because man, those fights were really good. Like watching the Tatiana Suarez, Carla Esparza fight, that was a fantastic fight, and it felt like Tatiana Suarez was becoming a superstar in that moment. It's just like, I don't know, what else do you do? I mean, I think it goes back to like my theory that I said a few episodes ago of the boy cries wolf, right? That's
the boy who cries wolf,
Who cries wolf, right? You just go, hey, look, we got amazing fights, we got amazing fights, tune in. And we've seen tons of times that it hasn't delivered, and when it does, people are not there to tune in. So maybe that's it. But yeah, it was very surprising. I thought the ratings were going to be a lot better.
Chuck, I'm not at all surprised. Are you?
Not totally, but at the same time, man, it's a disturbing trend. I mean, we've been talking about this on the show all year, really, but you don't like to see that, especially in situations where you knew, Suarez was in a position like this. You knew a good showing was probably going to catapult her into like because you could see her coming a little bit. I thought like it was going to catapult her into someplace. You think sometimes that translates outside of our bubble a little bit, but apparently not as much. And I think that the core has just, I don't know what it is, but there's certainly been fatigue in just the amount of events and everything. We've been through this.
This entire event was extraneous, too, if you really think about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just start with that, and you can't be overly surprised.
Yeah, so I'm not overly surprised. I mean, look, it's a star power business. What star power was there on that prelim card? What star power was there on the main card that would have bled down to the prelim card? None. This is what I'm talking about. It's like Tyron Woodley deserves all the respect in the world, but you also have to make a sober assessment of what kind of metrics he can drive with the Colby Covington fight. And I do think, under the right circumstances, that could be a lot. Headlining an MSG card, on short notice, no less. I'm a little bit skeptical of that, so I'm not surprised by that. I will say on the good side, because I don't want to end on a sour note for a card so good, 2 Suloev stretches. No one's even talking about the fact that Zabit Magomedsharipov looked amazing, which is just its own thing. But to me, the real
that is amazing.
The standouts, though, I wish Brian Campbell was here, but he's in Las Vegas covering Triple G Canelo 2, because he's been right this whole time. Women's strawweight is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous weight class. And you were mentioning it, Danny, Tatiana Suarez going in there and looking like Thanos, snapping her fingers, and everyone not feeling so good afterwards.
That was crazy.
And then you had Jessica Andrade with a one-hitter quitter. My God. I am so excited about that division. For you, the story coming out of that women's division is women's strawweight. It's pretty clearly the best division on the women's side, bar none.
Yeah, I feel like it's, kind of like men's light heavyweight division in its prime. Like right now we have all these like really interesting characters, and it's not only about their fighting styles, but who they are and who represent. Like I remember at 205 we had Vanderlei Silva from Brazil, Rampage Jackson. Everybody had like characters, right? We got Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the strawweight queen, right? Rose, yes, completely different person, represents something completely different. Andrade,
technically Lithuanian, but okay.
Yes, Andrade, same thing with
that headdress. And I'm so glad the UFC Lesser comes out with that.
Yeah, Tatiana Suarez with a wrestling background and everything that she's been through. It just feels like, sure, we have got like girls that are really good and really skilled, but they also have amazing stories. And then that just makes it super.
Did it feel big when you were there? Like, wow, these women are arriving.
Yes. I mean, both of those fights, because I think there was a little bit of a jaw-dropping moment when you see Carla Esparza, who likes to dictate the space in there a little bit and be the bully, just getting completely dominated like that. That's always going to translate when you're like, whoa, this is somebody just taking that person's game and just shoving it down there, And then the Andrade one, man, I mean, like the way she just came out of the horn, just going over there and just blasting her, I was like, we were sitting there like, dude, this is insane. Just knowing that Rose Namajunas has been able to accomplish what she has, where she's at, and just kind of the backstory a little bit. She's there for, I think that she's going to draw. I think she's going to be a bigger draw, but I think anybody they kind of put against her, if it's Andrade, that's a big fight now. And I just don't think that would have been before. Now, is it a big fight in terms of a huge pay-per-view? Maybe not. But if you put it as a co-main, it's just such a treat for the hardcores. Fight. It's an awesome fight now. You know what I mean? So,
and I think it's perfect for the ESPN age, where you can build your 10 cards that you need, and you could put the right kinds of fights on there and whatever. But you can also just have your fights that are streaming, where you don't necessarily have to worry about viewership in that kind of direct way, and you can just make a good card. And it'll
just
do well
focus on making the product good,
and it'll just be what it is.
There's some crazy, just real quick, crazy knockouts on that card too. Just the Jeff Neal, the head kick. He doesn't even get a bonus. And was it Alhassan Razak? His 43 seconds against Neal. I mean, it was just kind of nutty. It was a crazy card.
You have a piece coming out on Jeff Neal, correct?
I think it came out today. Yeah, he was basically as of today, he's back to waiting table. He went back to his restaurant.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, I was like, how you doing that, man?
Be nice to your waiters.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
you tip him more than the UFC. That's
that's a good zing. Anything else on the card worth mentioning, boys?
I mean, Zabit, that was the guy.
It was a short notice fight, so I don't think he got a lot of. I will say the other Suloev stretch there was Aljamain Sterling, and Aljamain Sterling now coming off that terrible loss to Marlon Moraes, gets the Brett Johns win, and now this win.
Yeah.
And I thought his striking has always looked better and better, but you could tell it wasn't quite instinctual. This is the first fight I saw where you could just tell he was flowing.
Yeah.
Really, really great.
I agree with you, man, because I feel like we've all been living in this, like, when is he going to realize his potential? Michael Johnson was a lot like this. I always felt like we were waiting for him, and then all of a sudden he starts getting losses, and you felt like you were never going to see it. He never got to the point you thought he would get to, but I feel like Aljamain Sterling is kind of doing the opposite. We saw some of his worst performances. Now he's starting to get it. He feels comfortable in there, and he's putting it all together, man. He looked great, I thought.
It's a tough reset to lose in the way that he did, but it seemed quite helpful, and I think he's 27, 28?
Yeah,
so he's got plenty of time. So shouts to Aljamain Sterling. What a fantastic job he did. All right, so that's what was in the past. Let's look forward again. UFC Moscow this week. There's really not a ton to say about this card, other than it's an important moment, I guess, for the UFC to be entering this market. They're doing it with a Fight Night card that's airing on Fight Pass, so it's not the most grandiose event I think I've ever seen. But a couple of things worth mentioning. Chuck, I'll go back to you on this one if I can. Mark Hunt is taking on Alexei Oleinik, I believe, in the main event. Oleinik already saying, well, I can't Ezekiel choke his fat neck, I think is the words that he used. So that's...
Sure you can.
It's like, okay, well, way to really sell the fight. But the other part is that Mark Hunt is still out there complaining about Brock Lesnar. Really, really upset about that. What do you make of his predicament in the UFC? He is headlining a card, and I think he should be easily favored to win. Yeah. He is bitter.
It's one of those situations where I feel like the UFC at this point has to be like, but Mark's going to, like, he's a big enough draw. We can put him on a main event, but there's always got to be this sigh at the back of it that says, yeah, but we're going to have to, like, deal with something. Remember the Players Tribune thing where he came out and he wrote this and he was taken off the card and then it became like this big stink. It's like there's always something. There's always something that's going on. This is the lingering one. And I feel like every time somebody, like, talks about this, just rip off the Band-Aid and just get, squirt lemon juice all over the wound. It's like every time somebody brings it up, he's just literally right back to the same level of intense dislike about a cheater, and it just kicks it right back in about this injustice that's going on, especially with Brock Lesnar coming back into it. I think it's just Mark Hunt, man. I mean, I think that honestly, he's a guy who he's not going to forget. I think that you just have to know this about Mark Hunt, and it's hard, man, because I think all of us can say that he's justified on a certain level. Like he's rightful to be upset, but there's also part of this like, man, you're still fighting and you keep going. You just kind of want him to be over it a little bit.
Here's what I'm saying. Like, if you righteously believe in what you're saying, I suppose that's the point.
Yeah.
But is that the point? Is that what he's doing here?
Well, it sucks because you're.
I'm trying to understand his message. Is it you're trying to convince people? Because I don't.
At this point, yeah.
Like, I don't understand. I'm not sure I understand what his aim and his long.
Is the lawsuit still going?
Yeah.
That's what's surprising. At this point, you're almost like, well, if the lawsuit's still going, just stop talking about it. You have an action in place to do something about it. Because it really just, I don't know how it helps. Like, you're promoting a fight, and I know that that's not everybody is going to promote a fight the way the UFC wants, but you're not promoting anything. You just keep bringing up something that people are like, at this point, I think a little fatigued by.
For sure. And I mean, criticizing the UFC is probably not going to do him any favors,
For sure.
So, but it's crazy because, like, I remember when, this whole Brock Lesnar got brought up, and then he came in the cage against Daniel Cormier, right? And they had their whole little thing, whatever you want to call it. Everybody was in. Everybody's like, yes, Brock Lesnar, Daniel Cormier, I'm in. And then you kind of forget about some things. And then when Mark Hunt, I've read his quotes, I'm like, dude, this dude's totally right.
Is he?
I mean, since they fought, Mark Hunt went on to fight 3 times, right? And then to the guy that he lost, right? And then given all the circumstances that went into that, now he's getting a title shot. It is unfair. It is not just. But I mean, what can you do?
The Brock Lesnar thing is going to always be incendiary, but he also is going to bring excitement and fun into the mix, which I'm like, man, sometimes you need that. Yeah. Like when he came into that cage with Cormier, it was like it came crashing back just how fun some of this can be. And I'm like, that's what the promotion is supposed to be doing, kind of giving you entertainment and fun. I know that the way, like the cheating and all this stuff, whatever you want to say, but I'm like, you can be blinded by this stuff at some point. Sometimes you just want to move on from it. You don't want to have to keep thinking about it.
Do you think they're putting him in these remote locales? I certainly wouldn't want to call Australia remote, but of course, relative to North America, it is remote. But, putting him in Moscow, they're just sort of putting him away. Now, they did put him in Vegas during, what was it, 2-0, God, what card was that I covered? I can't remember anymore. I do remember interviewing him in Vegas inside the T-Mobile Arena and him just saying nothing but, I mean, literally, so for folks who may not know,
was Derek Lewis fight, or? I
forget which one it was, but in any case, it was, maybe it was the Overeem fight?
Okay, yeah.
Something like that. Wow. But the point being is, for media day, you have to get in line, you have to pick which fighter you want to interview, you have to get in line. So there was like 5 guys in front of me. And literally all 5 were nothing but steroids questions. So I get to him like, has anyone asked you about anything about steroids? He's like, no, not really. I'm like, wow, like they didn't care about the matchup at all. So I think he also feels compelled because the media, and I'm not saying they're enabling him, but they're curious about this kind of thing. It's just, I'm curious, like, the one thing I don't quite get is like what you're trying to get out of it. You're trying to raise awareness for the unfairness. But the lawsuit will handle that.
True. That's that's what I'm trying to say. Like,
so it's like in between, what kind of good are you doing? I mean, I'm not suggesting he should remain silent about it. I don't think that's right either. But
he's repeating himself, though. Yeah. It's just repeating himself. He's already on record plenty of times saying exactly what he just said.
Yeah. All right. So then the other one I thought was kind of interesting was Arlovsky. He had a weird week in Moscow. I don't know if you guys saw the video. He was on some Russian TV set. I think it was like the UFC partner out there because they had like on the set they had like a big UFC logo with like all in lights. And they were showing highlights of him I'm not kidding, in slow motion getting knocked out. He actually, there's video of him, he walked off the set. Did you guys not see this?
I did not see this.
It was on, shouts to our sister side, the Bloody Elbow. He was like,
some balls.
He actually was like, and I think he said something disparaging about Russian fighters. I could be wrong about that, so don't hold me to that. But I took a side. I was like, why would you have a guest on and then show nothing? Like, it wasn't like they were showing like one of his wins and then one of his losses. No. They just showed him getting knocked out and then did it in slow motion.
Was it like on the background, or were they addressing it?
They were addressing it. They were talking over it, like post game footage or something. It was really weird.
Especially at his
and this stage of his career.
He's stage of his career.
So he's over in Russia, and he's fighting with Shamil Abdurakhimov, I believe is the guy who's fighting. In any event, what's funny about this is if it weren't for the last fight where he fought Tai Tuivasa, which was very controversial. He did lose it, but he could be on the cusp of a 3-fight winning streak after that incredible losing streak. I still think he believes he can manufacture Danny a title shot. Now, I'm not saying if he wins on Saturday, he gets there. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it is kind of interesting how long he's been able to hang around. And realistically, what kind of chance do you give him following any potential successful effort on Saturday?
I mean, I counted him out when he had that really bad streak. He comes to the UFC, right, and then pulls on so many wins, impressive ones too. And now he's having a rough streak, or he did recently. And I go, that might be the end of Andrei Arlovski. But then I think he beats, who did he beat? His first win? Not Struve before that.
I've forgotten now.
Yeah.
But he had a win where it was, I think it was Junior Albini.
Yes.
And then it was a fight where it wasn't that great. But then he goes against Struve, and I think he got more takedowns in that fight than he did his entire career. And you go, this guy's going out there and reinventing himself, and that's what matters.
Which is crazy.
We see guys like Chuck Liddell just go out there, towards the end of his career with the same style, and you go, man, like, you got to change things around if you want to stick around, right? Andrei Arlovski is doing that, and that's why he gives me hope that he can continue a career, because you can reinvent yourself even if your chin doesn't hold up as much as it used to. And then he has the Tai Tuivasa fight, which I scored it for him. Fantastic performance.
Very close.
Yeah. And let's be real. We're talking about the UFC heavyweight division where Brock Lesnar's getting a title shot. Not much is going on. Man, he gets the people buzzing. He gets a few good knockouts here and there. All of a sudden, he's at the top.
What do you think? What's his task?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. After seeing him come back, like you just said, because I thought he was done. I mean, you see him getting knocked out. I think he got knocked out like 4 times in that really bad streak, and then he changes, he adapts just enough to put together this great run, and suddenly he's right there again. And I think that he takes it serious enough that he knows he has to keep evolving. He knows he has to do certain things. I think he takes care of himself in the right way, and I think he's got a big enough name. I think people want to root for him in these strange ways when they see him kind of turn and knock somebody out or do something. I feel like we swell. There's a swell again of like, oh yeah, Arlovski. You know what I mean? Like,
remember the Travis Brown fight?
Yeah, of course. So I'm, those types of scenarios really work for him. If he does string together, especially like a good showing out there in Russia, and then he does one more, he could be right back in there, man.
Crazy.
I mean, the heavyweight division has been like that for years. It's just you're never that far out, especially when you've developed your name like that.
I've said it before. I'll say it again because it's worth repeating. When you get things wrong, you got to acknowledge it. I thought for sure, even coming out of World Series of Fighting, that I thought quite incorrectly that he was done, and then he comes back, he does really well, and then he had that losing streak, and I was like, okay, well, no, not now, this is it. Yeah. And then here he is winning.
He's resilient, man.
You have, like, the struggle.
He's got 7 lives.
Totally. The struggle that we have in MMA, and this is, yesterday it was announced that BJ Penn's going to fight Ryan Hall. Now, I do fundamentally believe it is time for BJ Penn to hang up the gloves. I will say that outright. And I don't say that in a mean or cruel or disparaging way, simply in a sober assessment. But I got to be honest, it is sometimes very hard to get that call right, because I thought I was going to make it with Andre, and I was dead wrong. Maybe I'll be wrong about BJ Penn too. I guess we'll have to see. I thought. Well, I don't know what we're going to get out of BJ, to be quite honest. But it's just a lesson in Andrei Arlovski. If you're someone who's observing him, to me, is a lesson in humility.
Yeah.
Be very careful about how you are ready to bury fighters, because you can be very wrong about it.
He also keeps our expectations a bit. I don't know what to expect from him at all. With BJ Penn, you're mentioning him. I think my expectations are as low as they could be. Like, I'm expecting something bad.
Didn't Arlovski have 5 or 6 losses?
He did, but even then, I think that most of it was like, he's chinny. If anybody hits him, he's going down. But he proved that he could actually still take a punch, because he had some big punches. And I'm like, so it was almost like he started to rewrite his story through that whole thing, which was crazy. I've never seen a turnaround like that.
And change team. Yeah, he's also very much an outlier in that regard.
Yeah.
So most of the time you can get it right.
Yes.
But it is a cautionary tale on being careful. He also changed teams. He's now with Mike Brown over at American Top Team, so I think that's done him a world of good. It's just very clever fighter, man. This guy's been, and even promotionally has been buried. Folks forget, what was it, UFC 100? No. Before that, when the UFC tried to put him on the prelim card and he was fighting Jake O'Brien.
It was 82.
They thought Jake O'Brien, that's right. They thought Jake O'Brien was just going to run over him. Oops, that didn't work out too well.
That's right.
Then he's had his stumbles. He did lose against Fedor and things like that. But anyway, it's really, really interesting and undulating path that he has had in his career. A couple more items I'd like to get to while we still have time. Of course, we alluded to the BJ Penn thing. I don't want to dwell on that. Good news out of here. Hawaii. Hello, Hawaii.
That?
You are going to get a big, I would consider that a pretty big fight. The Bellator organization in, I think, December, if I'm not mistaken.
December 15th.
Is going to be heading to the Aloha State, or whatever the hell they call it. And they're going to go to the Blaisdell Center, which is a historic venue for a lot of reasons, including in MMA. You know, it was interesting to me. I have a few theories about, not theories, I have a few thoughts about why I think it's actually a big deal. But, Danny, I'll go to you on this one. Your view of Bellator going to Hawaii, what is the significance?
I mean, this is a promotion that's trying new things. You know, the UFC has not been able to go to Hawaii, right? And we know that Hawaii has bred, you know, some of the best fighters. And, you know, now they have a champion with Ilima McFarlane. So, you know, there's a promotion that's trying new things, and that's always good. You know, you don't want promotions to be doing the exact same thing as the UFC. So it's good that they're taking a big show there. And they got Lyoto Machida fighting on that card as well. For me, I thought it was a home run for Bellator. Great idea.
Huge subtweet, right? It's like the UFC is going on like the whole time the UFC has been talking about it. And Max Holloway, after every victory, is like, well, I want to go to Hawaii. We're going to have a Hawaiian card. He's talking about those Hawaiian guys who are out there. And then Bellator just snapping fingers. They have their star kind of pegged, and they're like, we want a promoter. We're going to take her to Hawaii. It's great in that way, man. It's like, it's that kind of one-upsmanship thing going on there. And, I like it. I like that Bellator is doing it. I like that they broke ground a little bit there, because remember the Rumble on the Rock days and all that stuff, man. There was great fights back in the day, and I've always thought of it as a fighting state. Like I've always thought of it that way. So it's good to see them back.
You know what's interesting? Here was my thought about it. Was you mentioned Rumble on the Rock? Folks forget about Super Brawl, Rumble on the Rock, and Super Brawl I think eventually became Icon Sport.
It's like Jake Shields is fighting on that.
Jake Shields
like,
in there, Carlos Condit, Anderson Silva.
It was
man. Some huge
Domi
names. Talking to Nurmagomedov got whooped by BJ, and that was such a big fight at the time. And that's my point. Number one, as you noted, it's just Scott Coker subtweeting the UFC. Number two, I think it's been really interesting that as MMA has globalized, which I think has been a very good thing for the sport, somehow Hawaii got forgotten at the same time. It's really kind of a strange contradiction there. But the truth is, Hawaii has continued all this time to produce world-class fighters. There's been no shortage either in Bellator or UFC. So that part hasn't stopped. But what did stop somewhere around 2007 or so was big fights stopped happening on the island. All their guys got shipped over. The Brad Tavareses got shipped over, and the Yancy Medeiros and the Alemele McFarlanes, and you know, even the Kalahos, remember him from the Elite XC days? They all got shipped off the island, and folks forgot, man, that is a rabid market. One, it's Hawaii, a little bit inaccessible, but nevertheless, historically very important. When you and I were starting to cover the sport, Hawaii was just a place where big-name fighters...
It's true, man.
Frank Trigg fought there. Robbie Lawler fought there. Jason Mayhem Miller, before he had his sort of downfall, he fought there. Cabbage Correa fought there. And you can laugh at some of those names. You shouldn't. Those were big names and big fights at the time. It is so good.
It is cool
to see a place like Hawaii that's been nothing but good to MMA get a chance to have a fight come back their way.
Ed Ruth going to be on that card too, right?
Ed Ruth going to be on that card.
I mean, that's cool. That's an added bonus there. That tournament is going to have some guys there, so it'll be fun.
And I don't know if it's going to air on Paramount Network or DAZN. But
we all got to do that from now on.
So we say just like, who named this thing? But it'd be perfect for DAZN because it's not going to be on their best time frame. You really want to see that on tape delay on Paramount? Put that thing live. Put it on DAZN. Perfect, right? Great. Last but not least, Fabricio Werdum was sanctioned this week, or at least accepted a sanction. And here's the deal. He tested positive for something called trenbolone. If you guys don't know about this, they call it Tren for short. Tren is big in bodybuilding. It helps you to lean out. And he tested positive for loose metabolites involving that. I think I'm trying to figure out what the story is here, but I believe his story has been up to this point that it was somehow accidental, and I don't know exactly what his story is, but he admitted guilt to get the punishment. I don't know that he actually admits guilt that he did it. Something like an Alford plea. In any event, 41 years old, 2-year sanction, as we had previously indicated. So if he decides to come back, he'll be back at 43 years of age. Now, that is not
retroactive to May. Is that when it was?
Yeah, retroactive to May.
Yeah. So, and then there was a 4-month gap between the announcement of a potential suspension and the ultimate one, which makes you wonder. John Jones is about 15 months in. I just don't get it.
I don't either.
Neither here nor there. Speaking about Werdum, Danny, talk to me about it. What do you make of it? What's the big takeaway there from Werdum having this happen at this stage in his career, or happen to him at all? What's your takeaway from it?
I mean, we've discussed this like a number of times. Like USADA is that one sort of wild card, especially for the older guys. Like Werdum at this point, he's probably the biggest. His name is probably the biggest it will ever be. Former world champion. The guy already has a pretty established name. These are the years, and I know he's in a bit of a downfall, loss to Volkov, but these are the years where you benefit from that big name. So yeah, you take a loss, it doesn't really matter. I have a big name, I can still headline a card. I'm a former world champion, and then you get something like this, like USADA. So when he can fight again, he's going to be 43.
It's crazy.
That could actually be good for his career, maybe taking a break, because we've seen older fighters fight, but. I mean, it can also be the end of it, and you don't want that. You want to be in control. So yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous game.
Toughie, man. I mean, 2020, is when he's going to be able to come up, which is just kind of crazy.
So
it's weird to think about that. Yeah, it still does, even though it's coming up. But, it's just weird because he had a late surge. I think that a lot of, into his mid-30s, people weren't really talking. People knew who he was, but they weren't really talking about it. Yeah. It's like then he starts beating guys, and he actually started to enter a sphere where you say, is he the best heavyweight of all time?
I think for a very short period of time, he was one of the greatest.
Yeah. I mean, but you could start to make the case with the Fedor thing and everything. So I feel bad for, his situation. Especially if he didn't mean it, man. We hear the same excuse all the time. I don't know what you're supposed to do when they find these substances in people, but the whole situation is going to be tough for him to. It's going to be tough for him to overcome, man.
Do you think it tarnishes his legacy?
So many guys now on these tail end like that. I know Anderson Silva just was kind of exonerated from his situation, but it's still, once you're attached to it, it's weird. You can't help but hear their name and think, yeah, but the tainted supplement. You know what I mean? Like you start to, there's taint on it in some way. And I think that would be true also of Werdum. I just think that, you hate to make accusations. He fought in a lot of organizations where the stuff was kind of rampant, and I think
in
that
an era where
everybody does it, it just makes you can't help but go back and always then say who else was, how long was he doing, who's doing what, you can't help but do that.
But also use is always, use can be sporadic. Some guys use it for certain fights. Mia St. John, for example, the boxer, she didn't use it throughout her whole career. She's like, I used it for that fight, that fight, that fight, that fight.
Yeah.
I used this for that fight. I used something different for that fight. So you never really know, and I'm not saying that's what Fabricio Werdum did, or I don't. I've said at the outset, I don't know what Fabricio Werdum did. I don't think it will tarnish his legacy too much, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it maybe a little bit to the super anti-doping zealots, but everyone else, I think, will look.
For as big as he's been, too, his legacy.
He never looked super ripped up or anything.
Yeah, that was never a guy you would be like, USADA maybe should go knocking.
I guess it was a little surprising on that angle, because you're like, well, he just didn't strike you as the guy who needed it or was doing it.
And a lot of his progress was incremental, too. He came into the sport as like a jiu-jitsu guy.
Right.
Yeah. Then he got kind of better at Muay Thai, and then he got better at striking generally, and then his all-around game got pretty good. Yeah. And so you're like, well, it sort of seemed to work, and heavyweight's a little thin. So I don't know what the story is. I don't think it'll affect his legacy too much, but
I hope not. Honestly, I hope not.
We'll see. All right, so that's that. Before we finish, I always forget. I'm not going to forget today. We have to do the segment that we're doing now to end the show every time. Under the radar, a story that is not being picked up on, or it is being picked up on, but something small we didn't get to, but worth a mention before we close it out. Chuck?
Man, mine's not so good, but it's crazy we're lost in the McGregor fight. All the things that are kind of starting to swell up with this, that Tony Ferguson is going to be fighting right there underneath. Our interim champion is going to be fighting in the co-main. It's just, I was thinking about that psychologically, and I was like, how bizarre that he's doing this. He's going to fight Anthony Pettis in the co-main event, and it's just, I don't know how like, the guy deserves a ton of hoopla. He's had some bad luck, obviously, with this thing, but it's crazy that he's going to be almost under the radar going into that fight. And I think he's going to be, it's almost going to be like the Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald situation. And you almost wonder to what extent we're going to see him, I think, come fight night. Yeah. Because of that, you know what I mean?
Mine, I have two, if I may throw them. Jose Aldo is openly talking about fighting at 155. And unless there's a big name for him that gets him a title shot at 145 or a title shot itself, he's pretty much has his eyes set on 155, and I think that's super interesting, and just puts a nice shot into that division, and it could be a fresh start for him as well. The other one is The Zone, your favorite name, right? Picked up Combate Americas, and
my understanding is they got the English language.
The English broadcast. Combate Americas is on Univision, and that's on Spanish broadcast. Their English broadcast, which they had stopped for a little bit, now is going to resume and is going to be on The Zone.
Now, you've watched Combate Americas.
Yes, I have.
What do you think about it?
It's a pretty good product. I mean, these guys are giving opportunity to, for example, a lot of the ex-tough Latin America guys that, you know, have a big name in their country. Like, for example, Freddy Serrano, one of the most accomplished wrestlers in...
the most accomplished
wrestler in Colombia. This is a guy that's, you know, known in Colombia. Now all of a sudden gets that platform. I know he's not signed there, but guys like that, you know, get their shots. And, you know, we've seen a few guys, you know, come out there and start, you know, they get a good opportunity. And I talked to one of the ex-tough guys, his name is escaping me, Horacio Gutierrez. And he was telling me, look, honestly, like, I go back to Mexico, how much am I really going to get for an MMA fight in Mexico? Now I get to fight for Combate Americas, I'm on TV, I'm on Univision, and I get paid in dollars. So it's definitely healthy for, you know, breeding those Latin American guys that perhaps, you know, they're not getting good opportunities in their countries.
Great. Well, for my under the radar, I think I talked about the early stage of this weeks and weeks ago, but there is a bit of a development. As I think I mentioned previously, Eddie Cummings, the Wolverine, he did leave, in fact, Renzo Gracie. He is now over at Unity Jiu-Jitsu. Those are the Miao brothers, Marilla Santana, Dylan Dennis, Manshur Kara. So for Dylan Dennis and Manshur Kara, it's interesting. They get all of the people who get cast out from the other New York academies. So Dylan Dennis, of course, famously kicked out of Marcelo Garcia. He goes to Unity. And the same, I guess, well, I don't think Eddie Cummings got kicked out. It turns out, according to some of the publications that have been out there, that I guess what it came down to, now Eddie Cummings hasn't spoken about this, but I guess what it came down to was, he did confirm he was at Unity, by the way, so that's confirmed, that some of the things that have been credited to the Danaher Death Squad leg lock system, he believes are all his ideas and should never have been credited to John Danaher or the system. And he believes it's been unfair. And I guess in his judgment, or at least his old coach's judgment, happening for a while. So it's an interesting little split there. I was like, that caught my attention because most of the time, and I don't know, you know, this is something I'm trying to get in touch with all these folks to get what the story is, but most of the time you hear people talk about all of these figures in reverential tones, and to see some kind of schism between them.
That's true.
That's a little weird, right? So I'll try and follow that story and see what happens. Yeah. Now, the show is not over. Oh, no, it's not, ladies and gentlemen. It continues. We're going to have After the Beat. Now, we have been taking your questions using the hashtag the MMA Beat. You have sent in a bunch. I have selected some. Oh, they're weird, boys. They're weird.
All right.
It's going to be a fun time. So don't go anywhere. We're going to transition over. We're going to answer your questions. We appreciate all the submissions with the hashtag the MMA Beat. It is time now for After the Beat. All right, we're back. Luke Thomas, MMA Fighting, Sirius XM, Danny Segura, MMA Fighting. At the end, the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall from Da Ringer. You should be not from The Ringer. You should be from Da Ringer.
The Zone.
Yeah, it's The Zone and Da Ringer. And, of course, MMAfighting.com. Thank you guys so much. As I mentioned, we've been taking your questions, comments, bitches, gripes, and smart-ass remarks using the hashtag the MMA Beat. Thank you for all the submissions. Let's get to these questions, boys, shall we?
Let's try it.
What do we got first? All right, who wants to go with this one? Danny, how about you? With Tyron winning on Saturday, he is being talked about as the GOAT in welterweight conversation. Why does no one ever mention Rory McDonald?
Interesting. Well, for me, because again, the GOAT conversation is very personal, right? It's your thoughts on it. I've always tied the greatest of all time. I think accomplishment goes with it, or else, as I said, we'd be like the deadliest warrior going to his gyms and testing speed and damage and whatnot, and how perfect the technique is. So yes, it's viewing and acknowledging how technical someone can be, but for me, it's also tied to achievement. Roy McDonald just won a title at Bellator, and obviously in that division, I think it means a lot more than maybe what people give it credit for. But he has yet to defend the belt. You know, Tyron Woodley, on the other hand, who has a loss to Roy McDonald, has been out there defending, has been getting different types of challenges too, you know, different kinds of opponents. So I think that's why Tyron Woodley's probably closer to the, you know, GOAT conversation at welterweight than Roy McDonald is.
I also think that Woodley just went last. You know what I mean? Sometimes these things happen and we see them and we attach these crazy superlatives to them because it just happened. It's so fresh on the mind. We've done this since the word go, but if you really go back and look at GSP, you know, and his run, if you really looked at it and you revisited and you went through, I think it'd be very difficult to supplant and say like, oh, Woodley, you've done enough to supplant him or something like that. And same thing would probably be true of a guy like McDonald. But I think that his story is still being told. Yep. That certainly helps him to have that win. Mm-hmm. It helps Bellator to have that win. But you know, he did have a couple of losses in the UFC. He had some of them. I mean, most of his stuff that happened to him, he could have won, like that, you know, that Condit fight at UFC 115, I think it was, where he just in the last seconds he does. I mean, his legacy in terms of wins and losses is a little bit like there's some backstory to those a little bit, that they're not just clean losses. It wasn't like he was dominated. You know, a couple of them he should have won. So at some point, his story is still being told. At some point, maybe we will talk about Rory McDonald in that way.
I also think you're right. It's recency. You know, Tyron just fought. You know, and also the thing is, look, Tyron's gotten better over time. And now Rory's gotten better over time too. But Rory had, you know, that long layoff, and that long layoff was precipitated from 2 bad losses where he got really torn.
One was like a war with that.
So it's like he has since rebounded against Daly and of course against Lima, and he's looked phenomenal doing it. Although the Lima fight ended up being pretty competitive in spurts. But the point being is, one guy is just really shining, and one guy is re-raising his star. I think a fight between the two would be quite competitive, and I also think, look, it's close between them. It's close between them. Like, it's interesting. Shouts to MMA Reddit. They put together, some guy out there, I don't know who did it, put together like a list of different ways to, and some of those measurements you could quibble with as how valuable they are, but you know, who won rematches and how many wins against former champs and all kinds of different metrics between Woodley and St. Pierre. And it's frankly not very close. St. Pierre's resume is just ridiculous, right? As we all well know. But with everyone else, it's pretty competitive. It's pretty competitive. Like, there's a good argument that Rory could end up being somebody pretty special. So just wait. All I'm saying, just wait. Next. All right, Chuck. I know you love this. This is from our friend John Snowden. I think it is. It's Jonathan Snowden, excuse me. Which fictional characters? Now, he didn't say comic book, but which fictional characters would make the best cage fighters? Now, I'm going to pitch that to you in a literary sense.
Man, well, I'll go back first and say, like, I just saw Brawl in Cell Block 99 with Vince Vaughn playing Bradley.
Yes,
I think Bradley Thomas.
Good B movie.
It's actually really, it's because it goes in for it, right? Yeah. It goes in for that sort of thing. Like it wants to be this kind of weird thing, but that guy would be great.
If you guys have not seen it, he just basically, how would you describe him? He looks like Mr. Clean.
He does, and he it's almost like he doesn't register pain. So like every time something's happening to him, he just kind of shakes it off and keeps going, very aloof towards.
It's a one note. It's like, imagine the character from True Detective shaved his head and fought or something. It's something like that. I don't know, but it's a B movie, but it's actually a pretty good B movie. That's a good one.
Yeah,
I like that one.
I'll say that. I'll go with that one for now.
Fictional characters. So it could be from anything: book, comic book, movie.
MMA, right?
Yeah, fight MMA. Yeah.
I mean, imagine if like Rocky was real, like you know, like.
Well, to Philadelphians, he certainly is.
Yeah.
Got a statue and everything.
Yeah. Hashtag Bill Burr. You have a statue of Rocky and not Joe Louis. Stupid ass Philly.
Could it?
Joe Frazier. What am I saying, Joe?
Luke Cage would be a cool name, right?
Luke Cage would be a good one.
Plus, he's super strong, so
yeah, that's a good one. Everyone trends comic book. Comic book's too easy.
Yeah, it's too easy.
Because you can do Wolverine, you can do Deadpool, you can do Juggernaut, you can do Thanos, you can do Hulk. It's easy. Like that's not. I'm going to go from literary characters. I'm trying to think of literary. I would go from Lenny of Mice and Men. Yeah, he seemed quite strong. Right?
But can he learn the technique though?
You know what?
He just wants to bang, bro.
Let him bang, bro, first of all. And don't you discriminate on him because he might be a little mentally impaired. I'll go Lenny of Mice and Men. A little Steinbeck action.
I can see that.
How about that? Anyone else?
This is one of those questions that, like, as I'm on the train ride home, I'm like, oh, I should have said so-and-so. It's just, nobody pops to mind.
Who'd be better? Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer?
Man. Go Huck Finn on that one.
I think Huck Finn as well. A little more adventurous. A little more, thinking on his feet kind of guy. Yep. Danny?
I think of any.
He's still thinking of Rocky.
That's all I got. Maybe somebody else will pop up.
I do like the fact that Rocky had, he had win against Thunderlips in Rocky 3. It was a little bit of a cross, the wrestling with the boxing. So he was in that wheelhouse a little bit of the mixed martial arts.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It's not bad. All right.
He knew how to promote himself, too.
Well, thanks to the bad question from John Snowden. I'm teasing. All right. Who wants to take this one? Chuck? Favorite win celebration from an MMA fighter?
I still love Jose Aldo jumping out of the cage at UFC 142.
Pops on
you know what I mean? Like, he goes right into the crowd.
Let me clarify the question. is the question, and I guess it can be whatever you want it to be, but there's two different questions there. One is who had the good ritual celebration, the one they repeated over time, and then what's the all-time single best one?
Well, I love that one in terms of the single best, right?
Okay.
And I would even pitch his win over Jeremy Stevens to be one up there.
He celebrates the hell out of his wins, man. I like guys like, I think it's John Dodson who always does like these crazy flips. And I like, Northcutt always does it. You watch those guys do that stuff and you're just like, you just went through a fight. Like, you should be exhausted. And then they do some crazy thing and you're like, seeing that kind of energy after something like that is just always remarkable to me. So the guys who do stuff like that, or they do some headstand, or they're doing something like breakdance.
I mean, I always thought St. Pierre's backflips were like, not great.
No, they weren't great.
They're a little heavy.
They would always be like three-quarter. Yeah, he'd land like a newborn deer.
Yeah.
Is it Holly Holm who actually does a flip? But it's like
with the coach.
Yes, with the coach.
John flips her. Yeah. I like that one.
Yeah.
What about you?
The Henan Barao one was kind of cool. The little dancing he does. I don't know if you remember.
What's the cat?
I would also say,
Jimmo's
to
robot?
your point.
Remember the robot?
That one was great. Yeah.
You know what? Rest in peace, Ryan.
I know.
That was a great.
That was
one.
awesome at the time. He did it, and it was all over the place.
So good.
It was on point, yeah. And to your point, to the more athletic celebrations, Mark Hominick used to,
push-ups.
Yeah.
It was good. I'll go with my favorite all time, and I don't know how you could say anything other than this one. My favorite good one is BJ Penn, and once he cut open Joe Stevenson, licking the blood off the glove.
Yeah.
Y'all don't even know what it meant to look at BJ Penn back then. But my favorite is when Mark Coleman won the 2000 Openweight Grand Prix, and then jumped into the ring ropes and then fell backwards, or like nearly fell over, and like bounced off of it. There's a famous video of it. And the other one is like when he got. You ever see the fight between Mark Coleman and Fedor? Fedor just lumped him up. And then there's this like super traumatizing video. And I love Mark Coleman.
Little girls.
Mark Coleman and I will text each other occasionally. I love Mark Coleman. But Mark took up his little girls, and they're crying like their dad's face is a disaster. And then Fedor goes up there and like gives him the old, oh, shucks kind of punch. It was like, what is happening here?
One honorable mention is Husamar Horace celebrating after, I think it was the Dan Miller one. But it turns out the fight wasn't even over. They had to call him off the cage and be like, hey, you're celebrating prematurely. That's got to be honorably mentioned.
Justin Gaethje's flips are always like, is he going to break his ankle here? And he never does.
Demetrius Johnson's kicks.
Oh, the flip? Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does some of those. And he comes down like the karate pose, like one of those things. Those are always pretty good.
MVPs are always pretty good. Michael Venom Page.
Oh, he's always got something. It's the Pokeball. He had the Infinity Gauntlet. There's a lot. You know what?
There are a ton. I never really thought about that.
Tony Ferguson. Ferguson's. I like his breakdance entrance music a little bit better, but that is a good one too. As you can tell, man, there's a lot. There's a lot of like
Chuck Liddell throwing his arms back.
And I also miss Pride having the same music for the winner after every fight, and then bringing them that big ass check. The big ass check. You cannot go wrong with the big ass check.
It's a game show.
Yeah.
All right, so there you go. There's some good ones. By the way, if you have any other good ones, send us some using the hashtag the MMA Beat. All right, who had the last one? Who fielded the last one?
I started the last one.
So Danny, this one's for you. Do you guys think that after all this time off, Conor has developed enough anti-wrestling or enough jiu-jitsu skills to at least avoid being taken down and mauled by Khabib? What do you think?
Well, I'm sure he's improved, for sure. I mean,
that video came out this week. Looks pretty good. All edited footage, of course, but it looked pretty good.
And then we've seen, for example, when he fought Eddie Alvarez, we obviously knew that Eddie Alvarez was a stud wrestler. And he came in there and completely shut him down with his striking. I'm sure, obviously, there has to be improvement. Is it enough to stop Khabib? We'll find out.
No, answer the question. Don't give a we'll find out shit. What do you think?
I say yes.
You think so?
I think so.
All right.
I think his striking will do it. It's not really his sprawls and his, fishing for underhooks and all that.
The right moments.
But it's just finding, the right punch when Khabib shoots to keep him at bay. I think Conor will win this one. But again, I'm very split, but
okay.
That's my call.
I mean, I'm sure he's training it. I'm sure he's going through reps trying to get himself prepared for that. I'm not sure that it will ultimately save him if it goes to that. Like, I don't know if he'll be able to keep the fight standing if it's, I think honestly, like, it's more that he's training it, but at the same time, he wants to enact what he wants to do. And therefore, I think, yes, but probably marginally. He's probably got, as part of his game plan is to, these sprawls and stuff, like keep it standing and try to catch him with stuff during those moments and the scrambles and things like that. So, yes, but like, probably not enough, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive between getting mauled 4 times and still winning. Right. If you look at Khabib's takedown percentage, it's around 42% or so, because his initial shot is like Tatiana Suarez. It's just to make contact. Yeah. And then from there, they do something else. But that counts as a shot, and it's not good. And a lot of times, people forget, go back and watch the Edson Barboza fight. Now, Barboza was so on the back foot, both physically and I think mentally, that, you know, he was a little bit, not rattled, but he just couldn't get anything going. But he stuffed a lot of shots. Yeah. He stuffed a lot of shots. Ali Quinta stuffed some shots too. Like, it can be done. I absolutely think he will. And I think
he'll do it for 25 minutes.
If the fight goes that long. Here's what I think. I think one way or the other, Conor's going to get his licks in. I am firmly of the belief that. I also think that Khabib's going to get his in too. Yeah. And so who's going to be the one that really puts more? But like, people think it's going to be Conor left hand 13 seconds. I don't buy that. Or that Khabib's just going to have his way with him as if he was wrestling Danny or something. Yeah.
I got a pretty deep.
But you know what I'm saying? He have a size advantage. I'm just pointing out, I don't think it's going to be, I think both guys are so good. Yeah. They're going to bring their game to life. It's just who's going to bring their game to life more. Yeah. So that's what I think. Who knows? I don't know shit. Next.
None of us do.
This one I thought was interesting, Chuck, because we were having it before with Tyrant. Why is the GOAT debate so prevalent among MMA fans and journalists? This strikes me as especially odd when discussing fighters in the middle or early parts of their career. So the question is, why do we keep having these
Because psychologically, the sport is built on finding out who the best fighter is. You know, and so I think it just naturally lends itself at some point to saying, like, well, who's the best fighter of all time? Who's the best fighter right now going in all weight classes? You're just going to naturally do that. I personally don't really think about it that much. You think because they are divided in weight classes, it's more like these hypotheticals and things like that. I find it largely a waste of time, but I do get asked about it a lot in terms of who's the GOAT, who's the whatever. And it's always a tough one, man. You know, because I just don't think there's a clear answer. It's not. I think if John Jones had continued on his trajectory, had not been derailed, and again, now this is its own kettle of fish because some people still might consider him the GOAT. You know, I don't know. I felt like we have to see the rest of his career before you can make that determination. But if he had just kept smashing guys, and his only thing that ever happened to him was the blemish for getting disqualified in the Matt Hamill fight, to me, he was the clear-cut guy. Like, there was not a guy who did that just for so long. But his story obviously has to go on from here, and we'll see. But other than that, man, I mean, I think it's just part of the psychology of how we view sports and like how especially like, cause they do it in basketball, they do it in football, you know what I mean? They compare guys. Yeah. What would happen if Jordan were playing LeBron, you know? It's just, I think that they're just natural questions that people just get curious about. But in the fight game, especially because it's psychologically built to find out who the best fighter is.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And like, most of these fighters are sure, like they want to make money. They want to hold the title, but a lot of them just stated out there, I want to be the greatest of all time. Look at Darren Till just now, just mentioning, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm going to be the greatest of all time. So that's
very
also
much a young person's thing to say, though.
So that's also brought up by, you know, by the fighters themselves. But yeah, I agree with everything Chuck was saying.
I just think humans have a natural tendency to want to sort. Yeah. Like, what, we're going to watch a bunch of guys fight and not ask who's better. The whole idea is to find out who's better. And then you're sorting it by weight class. So then the whole thing is about ascending a ladder and getting a title. Now, unless you're Nate Diaz, in which case it's about getting paid. And even then, you're trying to get paid more than everything is about passing others over in a linear fashion. Like, why would you not have it? I think the bigger question is, how much can this debate really be fruitful? Yeah. And that's the part I really struggle with. I don't ever really get into the GOAT debates. Like, who do you think is the GOAT? I'm like, well, I basically think St. Pierre is the thing. Yeah. They're like, well, what about Demetrius? I'm like, good points. Yeah. You know, what am I supposed to say?
Well, exactly.
Sure, yeah. It's fine. It just, I think, you know, for me, some of the stuff I saw him do just seemed a bit more difficult in the end. And he showed a little bit more skill doing it. But there are a lot of good arguments. It's just hard. It's just ultimately, I just sort of think what I think, and I don't really debate it too much. It's the ones that want to plant a flag.
Yes.
And like,
because you can't
definitive.
Prove anything.
Yeah. There's no definitive, you know. Yeah. Anderson Silva was there for a long time, you know.
And then you get the drug testing stuff in there, and it just gets all weird. Yeah. So it's like, to me, it's like, you know, make a case for who you think, but then just be open to the idea that we don't have
subjective.
It's not totally subjective. You can make some ranking.
Right.
But at some point, it gets real super murky.
I mean, at the very top,
Right, at the very top. Just have some humility about it. And also St. Pierre. The answer is St. Pierre.
Yes.
All right, what's next?
Should be John Jones.
Yeah, John Jones, sorry. Okay, now this question is directed to me, but I'm going to put it out there. Besides Predator, what's your favorite old school Arnold movie? Should I go first, since I am the resident Arnold Schwarzenegger fanboy? Well, there's a number of good answers you could give. People might say the answer is Commando. Commando is an acceptable choice, as is the first Conan the Barbarian.
See, I'm not even considering all of these.
Hold on now, Danny, what is best in life? Do you know the answer to that question?
I don't.
To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentations of the women. Did you know that?
I did not.
Now you do. Take that one. Take that one with
quote?
you, my friend. That's from Conan the Barbarian. Oh my God!
I've never even watched the movie.
Have you ever seen Conan?
No. With Arnold? No, never.
You sicken me. Anyway, Conan the Barbarian's a good one. You ever seen Conan the Barbarian with James Earl Jones and Wilt Chamberlain? Oh my God! You guys remember this? They were the Snake Kings.
What was it?
Oh my God!
What was it called?
It was one of the Conan series.
Yeah.
What year was
I've seen all that stuff, but it's been a while.
The 80s, the glorious 80s.
I was born in 92, homie.
You had time. Do you not remember who was the god in the Conan? Do you remember?
No.
Crom. And the musical note, the score was called the Anvil of Crom. Dun, dun. It's what, for example, here's the MMA connection. Tim Boach used to come into Anvil of Crom.
Yeah.
The Conan thing.
That's right.
That's
right.
And all the chains are shaking. Yeah. Right. Guys.
That makes sense.
So that's a good one. You could go with Commando. You could go with, I think, now it was originally a book. Running Man is, to me, one of the true great Schwarzenegger movies. Overrated is the Mars movie.
That one's so
Total
great.
Recall.
Yeah.
Total Recall. The girl who had the three. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Overrated. Not good.
Even with the three.
You missed a big one.
You know what? That was...
You've missed a big one, probably the best movie in the 90s.
I don't think I've missed... If you say Kindergarten Cop, you're out that way.
Yeah, that was my pick.
Was it?
No.
Oh, who was
Terminator 2.
it? Terminator 2. That's a given. That's a given.
Terminator 2 is one of the greatest movies ever.
Also underrated. I'm an aficionado.
This is your question.
Yeah.
You
Someone asked
talk about
me,
the
I was
goat.
like,
He's like, he's got him. He's
We've
already,
screened them now.
The natural the want of sorting is showing itself right here in this.
How about Twins with Danny
I was going to say that one.
Twins.
That was
my favorite movie. About the whole premise.
True Lies.
True Lies is a good one. But the premise of Twins is so great. Basically, if you've never seen it, I'll spoil it because I don't give a fuck. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito are purported to be twins, like identical twins. And in the womb, something weird happened where Arnold got all of the musculature and brains and somehow a Bavarian accent. And as they said in the movie, Danny DeVito gets all the leftover crap. And they've somehow become twins. Anyway, it's I was watching. You ever read or watch the YouTube channel Red Letter Media? Mm-hmm. So Predator, the new Predator, is coming out. It's called The Predator. And the guy who wrote this new one is actually in the original one. His name is Shane Black. And Shane Black dies in the original Predator, but was helped write some of the script. And the point being was they were saying, like, would it be possible for Arnold to be a celebrity in like 2018? Like the 80s were just so perfect. Mm-hmm. This guy with this dumbass accent comes out, but he's got big muscles, total charisma, total confidence. And they're like, fuck it. Yeah, he's American. Why not? We'll just sell it. And it all worked. He was a huge star.
That's true.
Last Action Hero, another great Arnold movie. Like, I can do this all day, folks. I've seen all these movies a gazillion times.
So woefully.
Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, I can't think of any more, but I feel like I need to catch up on some of these.
Some of the subsequent Terminator ones, Terminator Genesis, Terminator 3, little poo-poo, those.
Yeah. Terminator 2 was the greatest Terminator. Right?
Terminator 2 is also not just a great action movie. I would argue one of the best sequels. Most sequels are kind of nubs.
Right.
True.
But Terminator 2 was pretty great. Anyway, Arnold Schwarzenegger is my hero. And if you say anything bad about him, you're dead to me. So just keep that. All right, next. Sorry, I just dominated that question. I apologize.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to you guys. Whoever wants to field this one. Just recently read In Search of Strange Brew. That's for you, Chuck.
Oh yeah.
For the first time, and it's easily one of the best long-form MMA articles I've ever read. Now, this person is very stupid, so that's okay. I'm teasing. Kudos to the man in the hat. Anyway, who is another long-lost figure in MMA who you'd like the panel to see featured? I think that's a great question.
That is a great question, and that has been brought up to me a lot because all of a sudden people see
there are so many figures that faded away.
Yes, and they see something like this where the guy literally becomes almost like a hermit, and they think immediately like, whatever happened to this guy? And whatever happened to this guy? there's a couple of them. Well, right now, where's Junie Browning? You know, like where is that guy?
Great question. Wow,
Like, what
I haven't
happened to
heard that
him?
name in a while.
Like I feel like he just fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
That would be one.
That's a good one. I spoke to Josh Koscheck this year. That was
Did you really?
Yeah.
And he was also a guy like sort
He
of
does
had dropped
military
out.
consulting. He's all rich, and I was bummed that he didn't go back for the reunion. I will say, remember that picture that got circulated?
Yeah.
But he was super friendly to me. I was great to talk to him, but I was sad he didn't make the reunion.
I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head because there's like since that article, so many people. Hey, can you try to find this person? Can you try to find this person?
Danny, is somebody out there who's kind of faded into the
Yes,
background?
I actually have wondered about Amir Sadal.
Wow.
Disappeared.
What a great call that is.
People say Frank Mir told me the first time Frank Mir ever saw me, he's like, "Are you Amir Sadal's little brother?" I was like, "No."
You're Persian? I thought you were Colombian. Interesting.
I don't know. I remember when he was coming up, he was also doing some TV stuff, and it felt like he was gonna
He was the
like
next,
a company.
He was the next big thing. What a great
And man,
call.
his striking was great. His jiu-jitsu was great. All
Is he
his
on
fights,
social media or
and he
anything
was-
like that?
I don't think so.
So that's what's weird is when they're not anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
And
you
he
just
was
don't see
from
them.
Richmond, and I believe he moved away to pursue higher training. I don't know what happened after that.
He was fantastic. I remember that's when I was like, Tough was one of my favorite shows. And he was always kind of like the underdog and would get beat up, but somehow would come back.
The original Verdum faces and shit.
He fought. I believe this is right. So at UFC Fight Night 20, it was Nate Diaz versus Gray Maynard.
Yeah,
and I remember that fight, and because the winner was on the verge of a title shot there. I think Amir Sadala fought on that card, and I remember I could be.
Is that the Sunrise, Florida card?
No, that was in Fairfax.
Okay,
Virginia. And that's why I remembered it. I could get the numbering wrong, but I remember when he walked out. I mean, the crowd. They loved him. And it wasn't just that he was like a relatively hometown guy, but that's a good one, man. Amir Sadal. I haven't heard that name in so long.
Yeah.
That's a good one. There's a couple of ones I was thinking about. I would like to talk to Gary Shaw and Scala.
Yeah.
I want to see what I know Gary's still sort of relatively involved in the boxing business.
I talked to Scala for a piece, I don't know, now it's been a few years ago, but it went on the 5-year anniversary of the Kimbo, Petrozelli thing. I remember I talked to him, I dug him up, and I think he's laying pretty low. Same with Tom Atencio.
The t-shirt guy.
Yeah, they lay low, man. They don't.
Where's Bjorn Rebney? Where did he go?
That's
Mexico.
Seriously though, wouldn't you want to sit down with him and be like, dude, what?
I like how he surfaced though for just a minute again.
Dude, it was the weirdest thing in the world. Like, what was that?
One of my favorite things was retweeting that Mexico too when the World Cup was going on.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
like they beat Germany. It was like Mexico.
That was a good one. There's some other ones out there I was thinking about.
Wayne Weems. Whatever happened to him?
Yeah. Jeff Osborne. Folks may not know who Jeff Osborne is. He was involved with Bodog Fight, but he was a UFC commentator for a time. He was the original promoter behind Hook and Shoot. Hook and Shoot was like Invicta before Invicta existed.
Yeah.
Misha Tate got head kicked in Hook and Shoot. Like they did a lot of interesting work. Jeff Osborne he was in the Jordan Breen show and told these crazy stories about. Remember, Cain Velasquez fought in Bodog Fight.
Yeah.
Folks may not remember that.
Damn.
And they had to set up a phony set on an ice rink in the middle of Russia, and they made it look like something it wasn't. And he like one of these pioneers that faded away. Now, sadly, who was the guy who made the rules? Who was the wrestler? Who was the Olympian? God, my memory is killing me.
Blatnick?
Who died? Jeff Blatnick. I did have a chance to catch up with Blatnick at Beat the Streets here in Times Square, just before he passed away. So I was really fortunate about that. But Jeff Osborne just kind of faded out.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those.
I've always said this, like. Some people just move on because they want to, and I don't know why some of these people have. I mean, Gary Shaw and Jared Shaw, they've washed out, but Jeff may have just decided to move on. But you see someone in this game like Scott Coker who's been around a long time, dude. That is hard to do.
It's the people who disappear from everything that you're like, whoa, because that's always the thing that makes you want to
MMA
find
naturally
pushes
people out. People the fire for MMA is so intense. It's like a mistress, but then it burns out, or marriage or something, whatever for love connection you want to make, but when it burns, dude, it gets extinguished.
There's guys like TJ Grant, for instance. You see him on Twitter a little bit, but he just, who knows the whole thing there? You know what I mean? Like he just one day, he was next for a title shot. It's just crazy. He beat Gray Man. Remember that? He was title shot, and then he's just gone.
Anybody else? That's
I'm trying to think
I'm
right
sure
now.
there's a ton.
Jorge Rivera, I don't know. That was one of the true.
That was your guy.
Yeah.
Did you?
He's coaching in he's training guys over in Massachusetts there. He was on ESPN's MMA Live with me for a while. Yeah, he lays really, really low, though.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of those. Like if you really sit down and...
Yeah.
Spencer Fisher. I know we talked about it for a while. I don't know what he's up to.
Spencer the King Fisher,
Man,
another one.
I heard he's running a gym out in Iowa or something.
Is that right?
Yeah. Last I heard, but
so many.
There's a lot of them.
So many stories.
Guys who were really big staples for a while, and they just kind of disappear at one point.
By the way, if you're watching this and you know any of these people, please have them contact me, or Chuck, or Danny, whoever, somebody from the site.
Look, like it's Spencer Fisher here.
So I would love to talk to the Shaws at some point, but neither here nor there.
That'd be awesome. You should talk to them.
And anyway, if you've never read Strange Brew, it's a good one.
Yeah,
you should check that out. Okay, I think we're done, yeah?
That's it.
All right, so I don't believe we're on next week. I think we're going to be on the week after that when we'll really dig and sink our teeth into a UFC 229 preview, because we were going to do it next week, but then the presser's going to happen, and I have a feeling it's going to be nothing like what we think. So our whole analysis will be irrelevant, at least not as a week in between. So I could be wrong. There's a chance we'll come back if something crazy happens. You never know. But for now, we're probably off next week. We appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, keep sending us questions. Keep sending us comments using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. So thank you guys so much for watching. For Chuck, that's Danny. I'm Luke. Till next time, hands up, chin down, let them fly. This is the MMA Beat.